First of all, I love the fact that you associate Motorhead
Yes.
with authenticity
And youth culture.
and youth culture, because that just speaks to you being right in the cutting
I
edge.
try to be an open book.
Yeah, so you're cutting edge, Motorhead, yeah. I'm not sure that I have a demographic. If I did have a demographic, I'm not sure that I overlap. It's Lemmy in Motorhead? Is that Lemmy?
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
Yeah. It could
Not a
be.
young man, no.
Who is? But I like to think that, sure, there might be some Motorhead spillover. I came up in Pittsburgh. I guess Motorhead was probably popular there. As far as authentic experience, when you say Eagle Rock Plaza, that just speaks, what does that say to me? Authenticity and experience. I wrote it as a column, but even the columns themselves, you know, I've always sort of felt vaguely nauseated when I hear journal as a verb. Can I just throw that out there? Like, I'm journaling this morning, but God bless those who are journaling. But I just sort of wrote to get through, and I had an outlet, the Rumpus, the guy, you know, my pal Stephen Elliott runs this thing, the Rumpus. I'm going like this to indicate that it's based in San Francisco, the all-purpose Northern Nod. And he invited me in to do it, and it was just a way of surviving, really, and dealing with the insanity and weirdness and shame and terror and utter delight, but even before the kid was born, you know, because, as you know from reading it, you know, I was given this medication to get off of hepatitis C that was experimental, non-FDA approved through the good people at Cedars-Sinai, which the second I took my first dose and they gave it to me, they said, oh, and by the way, if a pregnant woman so much as comes in contact with a drop of your sweat, this child will be born with, you know, essentially dorsal fins and a 3-day beard. So I had to deal with that. And, you know, the woman who ended up having the child and being my wife had to go, we shuttled her off to Austin to be away from any chance of contact with the toxic dad to be. And it was a fiasco. I didn't do interferon. That's the thing. This was an experimental drug because I always refused to do interferon.
It's not interferon.
And in fact, the only reason I was allowed to do this drug is because I was the few people who hadn't, I was what they call interferon naive.
Okay.
Thanks for asking. So that's how I got on this trial program, because I knew two people who killed themselves on interferon, and God bless the people who went through it, but it's really harsh. It had a small percentage of working, of effectiveness. And actually my liver doctor told me that the reason it was still so popular in America is that doctors got 30 grand a pop for doing it. And in fact, the cure was here. It was a way of dealing, the Happy Mutant baby pills was a way of dealing with the kind of urgent and hellacious reality of Monsanto and lack of water and genetically modified everything in antibiotic-resistant bacteria, on and on and on. The fact that breast milk now has benzene in it and motor oil, and that's just the good shit, you know. It also has lithium, so my baby would be born antidepressed, but for the most part, it's a pretty fucked up reality and a kind of level of danger and threat and menace that didn't exist before, because it's on a cellular and molecular level. And that, for me, I can't respond to shit without my head exploding, so I put it in a book. So in fact, Happy Mutant baby pills, sort of like Painkillers, which is about Mengele, was almost like a delivery system for a bunch of information around which I wove a narrative and a novel. Would I have been thinking about it had I not been going down the road of fatherhood? I don't know. Who the hell knows why you think what you think?
Yeah. Okay. You were famously the guy who wrote in Permanent Midnight that you missed the birth of your first child because you were slamming Mexican tar.
Didn't miss it. I was there.
Yeah. Okay.
I was there.
And then
I was, in fact, slamming Mexican tar, but I showed up.
But the baby was born yet, or you saw the baby being born?
No, I saw the baby being born.
Okay. All right.
But I was in the next room
My mistake.
fixing.
Okay.
I mean, it's an old chestnut of a story. I hadn't worn short sleeves in a while, so they had to throw me the scrubs. And I had tracks, and I had just fixed, and I got in there, just to repeat this old chestnut of a story, and the doctor looked at me as the baby was being born. He's handing me the scissors after it's born, And he sees this little trickle of blood coming down my arm, and I'm trying not to make my kid a cyclops because I've just banged this tar and suddenly it hits me. Sometimes it's a delayed reaction. And yeah, it was basically like with a kid, with a father like that, I should shove this kid back where she came from. But I am famously that guy who committed that act of malfeasance. Yes.
And that child now is grown and and you credit in the book. You mention her in the book as one of the funniest people you've ever met.
She is one of the funniest people I've ever met.
And I'm just wondering, having now come to the same place in the movie, how does she feel about this whole crazy third act complication hurdle you've set up for yourself in this crazy jag of life?
I would imagine there's some alternating current of amusement and, oh geez, but she loves the baby and they get along fine and she's doing great in spite of having a questionable dad for the early years of her life. And, I got lucky.
You quote your friend Hubert Selby, for instance, saying, describing himself as a scream looking for a mouth.
Uh-huh.
And I can't think of a better counterpart for the squalling id of an infant, the yop, the whatever that thing is, the barbaric yop of id, of wanting, junkies want. Junkies don't want because of anything, they just want. That's what an infant does.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Hubert Selby in that context because he had this theory about heroin that it was really about control. Being a junkie was about control. It's like when you don't get the sugar tit as a kid, you just don't get it. But as a heroin addict, when you don't get the sugar tit, you can create this need, create this Jones, and then you control it because you're administering the tit via the syringe. And really, it's not about anything but that kind of control. I would not say a baby is a scream looking for a mouth. I think babies are all mouth, pretty much, and their scream is perfectly located. When you look like me and your baby is screaming, people tend to think bad things are happening, My first child, when I was really broke, didn't have a car, we would have to travel by bus, and she would start screaming, and I was this, 14-pound green around the gills slime ball holding this adorable child. I was living in a garage, not to brag. That was a different story, but somehow in my own mind, I'm probably still that guy on some level. So in public, when the screams you were describing start to rain down, it's always a festival for me. I don't know if you've ever had an experience dipping your toe into the field of parenting books. And by the way, the weirdest thing to me when I got the book was the fact that on the back it says parenting. Doesn't say autobiography, doesn't say memoir, doesn't say literature and or humor. I'm in the parenting section. And if you ever looked at parenting books, by and large, it's a fairly twee, fairly NPR, oh my gosh, kind of humor. And I say that with love. And so I'm not sure exactly where I will fit and what kind of coronary some poor bastard who picks this up as a parenting book and gets home and is reading about, heroin anecdotes, which is nothing in this world either at this point. But it's very special to me that I have graduated from fictioneer, memoirist to a kind of life advisor,
Life coach.
Parenting coach.
Yeah, sure.
Because
even Dave Barry, Babies and Other Hazards, you have a demographic, you have a field.
We're always mentioned together.
Now you will be.
Yeah.
Starting with,
Thanks for putting that out there, man.
No problem.